Alright, welcome back to another video on this car. This is a 1993 Mercury Grand Marquis. It has the 5.0 liter Ford EFI engine. And what we're going to be doing today is replacing the thermostat. Quite a while back I replaced the water pump on this particular vehicle. And it's suggested to replace the thermostat at the same time. I was less wise at that point, so I did not. What you're going to need for this project, you're going to need a new thermostat. It looks a lot like this. I just went to the dealer or to the auto parts store and got whatever the original manufacturer recommended one is. There's lots of them depending on the temperature setting of the flow, basically what temperature it opens at. You're also going to need a new gasket, which you'll see right here. I've seen some people use RTV. The gasket came with the thermostat purchase, so I'm just going to use the gasket provided. You'll need something to scrape the old gasket off with. I'm going to use the blade out of my box cutter here. You're also going to need some new antifreeze, because we do have to drain some off from the system. The important thing to remember, of course, is to get the right antifreeze for your model. In this one, it uses just regular antifreeze, the green stuff. Do not put DEX-COOL in a system that is not designed for it, because it will corrode so bad. So we're going to go ahead and look down in here so I can show you where the thermostat is. You'll also need some tools for this, which I'll kind of point out when we get here. And here we go. So this is your upper radiator hose, and it's connected down here to this piece, which is the thermostat housing. And you'll end up we'll have to take these two hoses off, this one back here and this one here. They're just bolted on, it looks like. And then the housing comes off by way of this bolt and that bolt down there at the bottom. Sadly, it's kind of dark, but right down there, that bolt there. So those will come off, and that'll expose the thermostat. The thermostat is only held in there by the pressure of these two bolts, so you'll want to be aware of that when you take it off. And give me just a second to get my tools, and we'll get this drained a little bit. I'm going to try and take out about a gallon of fluid from the radiator. I've got the cap open just to make sure it's vented well. And the bleeder valve on this, or the drain valve, whichever you wish, is down here at the bottom. You can use that if you desire to drain some off. I think that's how I'm going to end up doing it. That wasn't how I wanted to do it, but that's how we're going to do it, because I think that's going to be the easiest. The other way I was thinking was I could run a hose into the top here and siphon it out, but I have a feeling that's going to take a long time. So I'm going to get that done, and we'll be right back. Alright, we now have that drained. You can see by the bucket down there, I've taken out just about a gallon. The amount that you have to take out will depend mostly on where your thermostat is located. Luckily, this one's mounted on the top. I think most of them are, so I didn't feel like I needed to take much out. If we look down here in the radiator, you'll see you can't, well, without a light, you can't really see how deep it is. But I've got it down to about here, which is about halfway on the radiator. There is still some fluid in the hose leading to the thermostat, as you can maybe be able to kind of hear squeezing on that, which we'll just have to deal with when it runs out. It shouldn't cause a problem when we pull it apart. One other thing that I didn't mention earlier that would be a good idea to have on hand are shop towels, because doing that drain down there, I actually had to take a pop bottle and cut a hole in the bottom of it to make a funnel, because the drain spout is at a very weird place. So that's the extent of that. Next, we're going to have to take these hoses off here. This hose and the smaller hose there that goes to the heater core, or to the water pump, I guess. And that's Looks like it's just a couple of either bolts, or if you want to use the standard screwdriver, if you can get it in there, which I think I will be able to, up through this angle in here. Those should come off pretty easy, and then we'll just slide those hoses back. Again, this is probably where you'll have some spillage on radiator fluid, so just be ready for that. And we will see you again when I get those off. Now that those hoses are off, this one here and that one there, I actually loosened it here to make it easier to rotate so I didn't break it if it was brittle or anything, which thankfully it wasn't. Now that those are off, we can take these two bolts off, and that should remove this piece. There is a possibility of a sensor on here. I have not seen it yet. We will deal with that when we get to it, if that's the case. So we'll go ahead and take those bolts off and pull this off. I didn't have any spill out of here after taking about a gallon out of the radiator, but as soon as I break that seal, that's going to leak a bunch on the ground and down around the engine. I'm not worried about it. I don't think it'll be a problem. If you wanted to, you could get a hose or something and siphon that out, but I'm not going to be too concerned with it. And we'll be right back. Alright, now with the bolts taken out, there were two of them right here. They were both the same size, and it's important not to lose the washer off the end of them. With those bolts taken out, the fluid should drain because this will come loose. This bottom one was a pain in the butt because it's such a tight area. Couldn't get the socket on it, so I had to get a wrench out. These were both 1/2 inch bolts. Had to get the wrench out and slide it back in here, across behind here, just to get it loose, and then I brought it up over the front and fought with the end of it. Yeah, it took me a while. So with those done, this should, if our hose is out of the way, should slide off of here. It looks like it's going to bring the thermostat with it, just like that. And that's the existing thermostat right there. And you see there's a piece of the old gasket here. We're gonna have to make sure we get all that cleaned off, and all of that cleaned off. And see, that's where it pooled. I'll get a towel and stick down there and draw that up, but clean all that off, and then we'll put her back together. So give me just a minute. I'll get the razor blade out off my box cutter, and we'll get to cleaning. Alright, once you have your parts cleaned off, there's that one down there. Let me block the sun so you can see it better. And then there's, ouch, hood ornament attacked me. This one up here. When you're cleaning these, you want to be very careful so you don't gouge them, because it's easy to make a groove in it and you could potentially have leaks coming through around your gasket, which is not something you want. Once it's all cleaned, I like to just feel the surface of it to make sure I've got the gasket completely off. There wasn't much on this side. It was just kind of dirty and gross. And then the same thing down here. I like to actually get down in there and feel the edges to make sure that it's smooth, that there's no texture on it. And that's kind of the easiest way to tell if it's clean or not. Once that's done, you'll take your new thermostat. And if you remember how you had the last one in, which you should, I just took mine out, right out of the outer piece of the housing, and set it face up so I could tell which direction it's at. Then you can take your new one and sit it in there the same way. In this case, the spring was up, so this spring will be up. The one thing to note, this little brass metal piece at the top, sometimes it's just a hole, that is the bleeder valve for the thermostat. That'll let air escape from the heater core and back through the system. So it's really nice because then it kind of bleeds itself out for you. So there's that. That always goes at the top, because if you put it at the bottom, it's not going to work. So that'll go at the top, and you can just set it down in there. It's got a little bit of a recess where it sits into, and then the gasket will actually go over top of this gap, but we're going to mount it onto the engine block itself. So I'll go ahead and take that off. As you'll see on this gasket, it's got 3 holes, or it will have when we take it off, and those 3 holes correspond to the flow hole here, or the hose here, and the 2 bolt holes. So that will go on there like this, and this one has an adhesive side on the back, so I'm going to go ahead and pop out the holes and stick it onto the engine block there, down there on the face of that, and we'll be back. And I've just noticed a mistake I was going to make. This has adhesive on the one side, and that will not stick on there properly that way, because it has to go on this way, based on where the let's see if we can get you down there, where the locations of the holes are. So this is going to have to stick on to the thermostat and the heater, or not the heater, the outer section of the coupling. So I'll just get that set in place and stuck on, and then we'll move back to the probably the most annoying part, putting the bolts back in. So we've got the gasket in place. Thanks to the self-adhesive part, it made it really easy, and it's also going to help to hold the thermostat in place when we put this back in. That little pin I was telling you about that goes at the top of the thermostat, I actually had it oriented upside down. So the cool thing is there's a little bit of a cutout on the top side of this, so it won't even set in there right unless you have it in the right direction. So now we're going to put the bolts back in. We'll do the bottom right bolt because it was more annoying to put it back in, so we can get it lined up back on there, and we'll be back after we get the bolts attached so we can put the hoses on. Alright, we've got this back on. I did end up, let me see if I can block this sun here. We'll just work with it. I did end up removing this electrical connection that goes to the distributor coil, because it made it easier to get my wrench down there on that second bolt. But otherwise, it just took time to get the bolts realigned. Now we're ready to put the hoses in, or not, yeah, the hoses back on, and fill her back up with radiator fluid. The one thing to remember, if, like mine, your hose clamp come off of the smaller one, remember to put that back on before you hook the hose up, or you'll be upset with yourself. So we'll meet back up after I get it all back assembled, and for a final wrap-up. And we're done. We got the big hose retightened, we got the smaller hose tightened back up. Don't forget to put your power supply back into your distributor coil if you remove that. That finishes all the reassembly. The only other thing to keep in mind that I almost forgot is down in the bottom, I left the drain plug slightly loose, so if I needed to take more, it was easy to deal with. Remember to tighten up your drain plug in the bottom, and then fill her up with antifreeze. Remember, it's a 50-50 mix of whichever type you happen to have. In my case, it's the green kind, the non-DEX-COOL kind. Again, remember not to mix the 2 different types. Once you have it filled up, you'll want to go ahead and start up the engine and run it for a while, and let it heat up and help get the air to circulate out of the system and back to the radiator, so it can balance out the fluids, because where you open that up in the inside there, in the thermostat area, there's going to be air trapped in the system. So that should, by running it, the pump will kick in and should be able to push that through the system, and that's what that bleeder valve was on the top of the thermostat that I showed you. And that's going to do it. That's the end of the game. Again, remember to fill your radiator back up, because you don't want to run without fluid. And that's going to do it. Over the next couple of days and driving around, make sure you watch your radiator levels. Always check it when it's cold, because you don't want to burn yourself when it's hot. Make sure your radiator and your overflow reservoir stay full, and you're going to be set. That's a thermostat replacement here on Unexpectedly Random. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, we hope to have some more videos as problems continue to occur or maintenance needs to be done on this vehicle. And go ahead and subscribe so you can get those videos as they come out, and go ahead and check out our other videos. You never know, we may have something else that might interest you. We try and keep a mix of just about everything here on this channel. So until next time, guys, stay random.